it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm, and tomorrow is my second farmer's market. So for my second farmer's market, I am actually gonna have some flowers to sell that I grew on my own, and these are tulips. And I got really lucky because my ranunculus started budding. So here's some ranunculus. You can see this one's a little bit, more opened up, but I do have a few that are in the prime stage of picking. So these will have the optimal vase life of 10 days plus. But the prior owner of the house also had a lot of catnip growing outside. So I actually have some filler. And what really saved my butt this time around was the fact that I decided to experiment and take a chance on a portion of where I lived before. So I lived in a townhouse and I had a north-facing area that was underneath the deck. So on the deck, I actually got a decent amount of light. I would say I got about 6 hours of total sunlight. Now, most of it was morning sunlight because it was north-facing, but morning sunlight is typically seen as inferior to afternoon sunlight for sun-loving plants. But, I saw that my tomatoes did really, really well. So I said to myself, maybe I can grow something underneath the deck, even though it only gets like 3 hours of morning light at this time of year. And I would say by peak summer, you're talking about like 4 hours. So I put tulip bulbs that I found on clearance in December. I got a bag of 50 for, it was like $9.48. And I thought, what do I have to lose? And this is what I got. And the craziest part is that the stem length on these is actually pretty good. I put these in late December because that's when I got it. And it was just surprising to see that they didn't get the full 3 months of cooling because we had some really hot days in March and they still turned out okay. So, it's just one of those things where sometimes you take the gamble and it doesn't pay off, and sometimes you do and it saves your butt for a market. So I'm just super, super excited that I actually have something to sell, and it was something that I grew on my own. Now, we also got lucky in the sense that we used to live in an area that is a little bit more elevated. It is actually 4 degrees cooler than where we live now, to the point where I'm in zone 6B now. I was in zone 6A before. So that also helped the tulips from that regard. And then also the fact that when I pick them, I put them directly in ice water. So I actually don't have a cooler. I have a root cellar that sits at 55 degrees. It's funny because I put these up here for about 10 minutes and they're already starting to open up. So I'll show you in a little bit what I'm gonna do with some of these open up buds. I'm gonna keep some of them, but a lot of these are actually still okay in terms of just stage for selling tomorrow. So I'm gonna put this on a time lapse and you can see what I do with these. So I don't have many. I know I'm gonna have some more ranunculus in the morning, but here's a vase. So I'm gonna sell it with the vase, and that's where the value of this will come from. I'm still thinking about the pricing of this, to be honest, but I was able to find this vase on clearance at Home Goods and it was like $9.99. So I just thought it would be a really good way to present. And it also allows me to control the temperature a bit more. It's gonna be really hot tomorrow, so I'm gonna have ice cubes in here. And then I was able to make 2 other bouquets from all of this. So this one here, I really, really love. And then this one here also is quite pretty, and there's a bit of a mix of ranunculus and tulips in this one. So you probably noticed that I had a few tulips that were pretty blown out and open. We were, I would say, a day late in terms of harvesting those stems. There were about a dozen of them, and we were just out in California visiting family on a vacation, so we couldn't really control when we were picking these. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to pick any of these tulips for sale. So this is what they look like. You can tell that they are fully blown out to the point where they almost don't even look like tulips. There's something very whimsical about tulips when they're blown out like this. So, can't sell them, but at least I'll get to enjoy them on my living room coffee table. Hey everyone, I wanted to give you an update on the market, and I tried recording yesterday, except the camera was facing the wrong way. So take two today. And I want to talk about numbers and some learning. So I will say that I thought I did decently. I sold $600 worth. I told my husband that I'd be happy if I sold $500 worth. So definitely hit that goal. Now the caveat is that the majority of those sales were soap and candles. So obviously less relevant to you as a flower farmer, but really emphasizes the fact that if you have some sort of other product that you can complement with flowers, it does help in these times where, you know, you might not have as many stems to sell. So that was kind of like, you know, like we're in a time right now where I think a lot of flower farmers, unless if you've overwintered and you've really thought it through, this is that time between spring bulbs and summer annuals where it's kind of hard to find stems to sell. And at this point, so it's funny because I tried to plan for this time. I thought I had stock. I thought I would have more ranunculus. Technically, my ranunculus didn't start blooming until like day 110. So it was definitely a few weeks after the 90-day mark. My stock, I don't even know if they will bloom this season. They just feel a little bit stunted and it's starting to get warm outside, at least with the ranunculus. I grew it in a crate, so they're already in a shady area right now, and they will actually go into my garage when it hits 90 next week. So I have a little bit of flexibility there. But yeah, so not a lot of stems to sell. I had 3 bouquets to sell, and I got lucky that I even had any because I was able to take those tulips that I had from the townhouse. And so I sold 2 of those bouquets at $15. Even though they actually had a decent number of stems, they were all single varieties. They weren't harvested at like the optimal time. So just, you know, in good conscience, I didn't want to sell it at the $20 mark. And I also want to experiment at the pricing point, right? So then the 3rd bouquet, I sold at $10. And that was the bouquet that I wanted to sell in that vase arrangement. Now the problem was it was a very humid day from the get-go, and the flowers just started opening up, and I brought ice and everything, and it just didn't work. So I wanted to save the vase for a more special arrangement. And so I took that bunch out of the vase and I put it for $10, and all 3 bouquets literally went within the first hour. During my first market, where I had 23 bouquets of beautiful specialty tulips, at that $20 price point, it actually took some time for me to sell the first bouquet. And it wasn't until we had a few people lining up and a few people walking around with flowers that people actually came to my table. But people walking past my table, looking at the signage and seeing the flowers at the $15 price point was a much easier sell for them. And the good news was that one of the people who bought those 3 bouquets actually came back from the first week looking for me because she really loved the tulips from before. So, you know, it seems like she is actually going to be somewhat of a regular. But going back to this pricing piece, you know, I really think that there's, how do you say, like the sweet spot for me might actually be $15 and not $20. And this doesn't mean that I'm going to be selling a $20 a bouquet worth $20 for $15. No, I'm going to be making a bouquet that is worth $15 and selling it at $15. So, you know, at the end of the day, it just means that for every 4 bouquets that I sell at $15, I need to sell an extra one to reach that same dollar threshold that I would have gotten if I sold a bouquet for $20. But, you know, this is a high traffic market. I think it's a market where I can actually do more in volume if I have the number of stems for it than trying to get a higher price point and selling to fewer people. And that's definitely a consideration that you need to have for your market, right? Like, what does your market look like? I realize that this market I go to really does have a lot of regulars. In fact, there are people who literally go to the market every single week. And in this type of environment, which is inflationary, meaning that costs are rising, you know, wages are not rising at the same point, even though flowers are somewhat recession proof, you know, there is always that limit, right? So how do you give someone the ability to buy flowers on a regular basis and feel like that they can still afford those flowers, right? So I feel like that $15 point might actually be the sweet spot for me. And I live in a part of New Jersey where that market is actually in a somewhat well-to-do area. So, you know, for me to come to this conclusion, I'm still going to test it out a bit. But you know, it's not an easy conclusion, or it's not one that I would have started off with if I hadn't observed the traffic. So just some food for thought for you. I'm hoping that by my next market, I am going to have more ranunculus, might have some snapdragon, and we'll see what happens with the stock, but it's going to be slim pickings until mid-June-ish. So, a lot can happen in 2 weeks, but Numbers. So I said I did $600 worth. My COGS, or cost of goods sold, for this market was predominantly soap and candles, and that cost me $264. There's about $10 in there for the tulips. So the tulips themselves, I bought a pack of 50 for $9.58 on clearance, and I put them in December, so you can see how lucky I am that I actually got blooms out of them. The corms for the ranunculus, I actually got 6 blooms that I was able to put two in each of those bouquets that I sold. Those corms were $4.98 for a pack of 30 each, and I bought 2 packs. So pretty low cost in terms of the bouquets this time around. I would estimate that each bouquet really cost me a couple of dollars to make. So that was good. Labor, I'm saying it's $165. That accounts for my time, my husband's time at the market, the time it takes to drive to the market, 20 minutes each way, and then my time for assembling the bouquets. Going forward, my husband will just go with me to help me set up, and then he will actually leave because I don't think we actually need 2 people at the booth. And then because we are actually paying ourselves, that will give me a little bit more money to put back into the business, and it will also give me it'll force me to optimize being efficient at the market. Mileage for inventory was 0 this time around. I didn't have to go anywhere to get blooms or my soaps and candles. Square fee, $17. So that is the credit card processing fee. And then sales tax came out to $40. So total, this is after I pay labor for myself, my profit was $94, which, is not terrible, because I have factored in labor. Now, if I didn't factor in labor, right, that's $165. So, we're looking at like $270 or $280-ish in profit, which really isn't that bad, right? So this is one of those things where I knew if I had more flowers, I could get closer to that $1,000 mark. But it's also one of those things where if I only had flowers, I feel like at this market, I would top out at like $400 or $500. And that's kind of tough, right? Because you spend all this time growing and spend all this time just like, figuring out like how to produce these blooms. And I just don't know if I would ever get to that $1,000 mark. I think with markets, it does take that relationship building and people knowing that you're there to come for you. But in the beginning, I just don't think I would ever reach that point without something like soap and candles to help supplement it. And I think this is the other piece here, which is just like, I am going to be struggling to get to 20 bouquets to sell at a single market until the height of the summer. So I'm doing my best to forage around, to hurry things along in the garden. Obviously, I have very little control over that, right? But I know a lot of you guys are probably also going to struggle with having stems to sell. So, I think at the end of the day, you learn these lessons and you try to plan a little bit better for next year. So I'll be able to overwinter next year and hopefully get me through at least the May period should I choose to do a market again. So hope this was helpful. I'll keep you updated on how my other markets go. But for now, happy mid-May, and I will have another market at the very end of May. So that will be 3 markets for May, and we'll see what happens. I will see you next time.